People always talk about their wedding day like it's a perfect, sunlit memory, dusted with laughter and the glow of love. I guess I wanted that, too. In my mind, I always pictured waking up to my mother's gentle hands fussing over my hair, my father grumbling affectionately about how grown-up I looked, and my little brother Adam making jokes to calm my nerves. Instead, on the morning of my wedding, I woke up in a house that felt more empty than ever. The day started early, the way all big days seem to do, with sunlight spilling through the lacy curtains of my old bedroom in Charleston, South Carolina. I could smell the gardenias and roses, my mother's favorites, coming from the arrangements that filled every corner of the house. For a moment, I lay there with my eyes closed, imagining how the morning would unfold. The rush, the laughter, my family bustling around me as we got ready. That's how it should have been. But as I listened, the house was quiet. Unnaturally quiet. I slipped on my robe and padded down the hallway, expecting to find my parents in the kitchen, maybe even my brother Adam, already sneaking cookies from the breakfast spread. But there was nothing. No clatter of dishes, no whisper of conversation, not even the sound of the old radio my dad loved to keep on in the mornings. The kitchen, when I reached it, was immaculate, far too tidy for a day like this. There was only one thing on the table, a single white envelope with my name written on it in my mother's familiar, looping script. My stomach twisted. I picked up the envelope, noticing how cold the marble countertop felt against my skin. For a second, I wondered if this was some elaborate wedding day tradition, maybe a heartfelt letter, some words of wisdom to start my new life. But as I slid open the envelope and slid out the note, I realized how wrong I was. The letter was brief. It said, "Let's see how you face the guests when we won't be appearing at your wedding." That was it. No warm wishes, no motherly advice, not even a signature. My hands started shaking, the words blurring on the page as I read them again and again, hoping I'd misunderstood. My heart raced as the truth set in. They weren't here. They weren't anywhere in the house. My parents, Linda and Robert and even Adam, had left on my wedding day. The absurdity of it stung almost as much as the cruelty. Who does that? I found myself searching for some clue that this was all a joke, that they'd burst out laughing from behind the pantry door. But the silence in the house was real, heavy as a stone. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter still in my hand, and let the stillness wash over me. I thought of all the times I'd pictured this day, never imagining I'd face it alone. Maybe I should have seen it coming. My parents had always made their feelings clear about William, my fiancé. They said his family was too different, too wealthy, too distant from the life they'd pictured for me. But I thought that, when the time came, they'd swallow their pride and show up. I never believed they'd abandon me. Not like this. The hours that followed are a blur. I wandered from room to room, checking my phone, hoping for a message or some sign that they'd change their minds. Instead, all I found was the echo of their absence. Our living room, usually so full of life, felt like a museum. My mother's needlepoint pillows were perfectly arranged on the couch, and the family photos lined up neatly on the mantel. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I'd lost. As the morning wore on, friends and relatives began to arrive. My best friend Grace was the first to notice something was wrong. She found me sitting on the stairs, clutching the letter and staring into space. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me, offering silent comfort. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "You don't need anyone's permission to be happy." I tried to focus on her words, but it was hard. Every knock at the door, every voice in the hallway reminded me of who wasn't there. I kept expecting to see my father's tall figure coming around the corner, my mother fussing with her hat, Adam sneaking a wink in my direction. But they were gone, on a flight to Paris of all places. I pictured them strolling the streets by the Seine, sipping coffee in a little European cafe, as if this day meant nothing to them at all. Despite the ache in my chest, I forced myself to keep moving. I let Grace help me into my dress, her steady hands working the buttons while I tried not to cry. She told jokes, talked about the weather, anything to distract me. "You're marrying into a millionaire family," she teased, fluffing my veil. If your parents could see this, they'd regret everything. Maybe she was right. I tried to believe it. Standing at the top of the stairs in my wedding gown, I paused for a moment, looking out over the crowd that had gathered in our backyard. Friends from college, distant relatives, William's family from Chicago, all here to celebrate. I realized that for the first time I had to face the world on my own. No parents to guide me, no brother to make me laugh.
It was just me.
As I made my way down the aisle, I felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe it was the sunlight, or the scent of roses drifting through the air, or maybe it was the realization that I could survive this. That even though my family had chosen Paris over my wedding, I could choose to be happy anyway. Looking back now, I know that letter changed me. It hurt, yes, but it also set me free. Sometimes, the hardest moments are the ones that push us to grow. And as I took William's hand and promised to build a new life together, I knew I was ready, no matter who was watching or who had chosen to turn away. By noon, the house I grew up in was humming with the sounds of arriving guests, heels tapping on the porch, laughter tumbling through the open windows, the clinking of glassware as trays of sparkling wine floated through the foyer. But in the center of all that excitement, I felt strangely alone. I stood in my childhood bedroom, wrapped in layers of satin and lace, staring at my reflection. My wedding dress shimmered in the morning light, but the girl inside the dress just looked scared and a little bit lost. Grace was with me, of course. She never left my side for more than a minute. She flitted around the room, fixing my hair, straightening my necklace, fluffing my veil. Now and then, she'd say something to make me laugh, like, "If you trip on that train, just pretend it's a new dance move," or, "Who needs parents when you're marrying into a millionaire family?" She meant well, and her jokes did lift my spirits a little, but I could feel a hollow ache deep inside my chest. The house was full of people, but it wasn't full of my people. Still, I had to push those feelings aside. I took a deep breath, let Grace give me one last hug, and told myself to smile. There were guests to greet, and a wedding to celebrate. Downstairs, the rooms were almost unrecognizable. White and gold ribbons wound around the banisters. Bouquets of white roses and lilies filled every vase. The big front window was thrown open to let in the soft breeze from the garden, and I could hear the distant laughter of children running through the grass. I wondered if my parents had ever pictured my wedding looking like this. William's family was already there, of course, making themselves at home. His mother, Charlotte Turner, swept through the house like a queen, her gown trailing behind her, diamonds at her throat, and ears catching the sunlight every time she moved. I tried not to stare, but I'd never seen jewels that big outside of a museum. She greeted each guest with a practiced smile, offering compliments in a voice as smooth as velvet. William's father, Henry Turner, arrived in a limousine so long it barely fit in our driveway. He stepped out with a laugh, tipping the driver with what looked suspiciously like a $100 bill. Just watching him made me feel both very small and very, very out of place. Still, their warmth surprised me. Charlotte took my hands and said, "My dear, you look radiant. You're already part of our family." Henry gave me a quick, fatherly hug and whispered, "Don't be nervous. Today is for you and William." Their kindness soothed me, just a little. They were everything my parents hadn't been, present, supportive, eager to make me feel welcome. But it also made the absence of my own family even more obvious, like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. As the afternoon slipped by, the house filled with more and more people, friends from college, distant cousins I barely recognized, William's colleagues from Chicago, and their elegant, well-dressed spouses. I heard snatches of conversation in every room, stories about business trips to London, debates about where to buy the best summer home, laughter about the old money, ways of Chicago's Gold Coast. Someone mentioned that William's family owned half a block of Michigan Avenue. I glanced down at my simple wedding ring, feeling suddenly shy about everything I owned and everything I was. I tried to keep myself busy, greeting guests, accepting congratulations, and introducing Grace to everyone who'd listen. She thrived on it, chatting with everyone as if she'd known them for years. But I kept glancing out the window, searching for a familiar face that never came. Every time a car pulled up outside, my heart would leap, then drop again when it was just another distant relative or business associate. Eventually, the time came for the ceremony. The living room had been transformed into a fairy tale chapel, white chairs lined up in neat rows, sunlight pouring through the windows onto the polished wood floor. At the front, an archway covered in lilies and ivy marked the spot where I would say my vows. I could see the camera crews setting up in the corner, their lights making everything look even more magical and unreal. William's family believed in big gestures, and apparently, that included inviting the local news to cover their only son's wedding. I had never been on television in my life, but there was no backing out now. Grace squeezed my hand one last time before I walked down the aisle. "You're ready," she whispered, "and you look like $1 million." I laughed despite myself, and for the first time all day, I felt a flicker of excitement. Maybe, just maybe, this day could still be mine. The music started, a gentle piano, nothing too grand, and I stepped into the living room, every eye on me. The camera flashes dazzled me, the hush of the crowd settling over everything like a soft blanket. At the front of the room, William waited, his eyes full of warmth and promise. He looked at me the way no one ever had, as if I were the only person in the world. I felt the ache in my chest loosen, just a little. As I walked toward him, I let myself forget about the letter, about Paris, about all the empty places in the room where my family should have been. I focused on William's smile, the gentle squeeze of his hand when I reached him, the way his voice trembled with emotion as he whispered, "You're here." The minister's words floated over me, and the crowd faded away. When it came time to say, "I do," my voice was steady, my heart clear. The cameras rolled, the guests held their breath, and somewhere across the ocean, maybe in a Parisian cafe, I hoped my parents were watching. Maybe they'd see the daughter they left behind, stronger, braver, and happier than they expected. The applause at the end of the ceremony felt like thunder. William kissed me, and for a moment, all the loneliness vanished. I was surrounded by people who cared, even if they weren't the ones I'd always dreamed of. The news crew caught every moment. Our first dance, the laughter, the way Charlotte and Henry embraced me like their own daughter. The world saw me step into a new life, even as I quietly closed the door on my old one. That night, after the music faded and the guests went home, I stood alone in the garden under a blanket of stars. I let myself feel everything, the pain, the joy, the strange sense of freedom. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but as I watched the moon rise over my new family, I knew I was ready for it. After the last dance, after the final round of applause, after the champagne had lost its bubbles and the sun had sunk below the trees, I finally stepped away from the blur of celebration. My new husband, William, was still outside with his parents, laughing with his father about something that had happened during the toasts. Grace was helping the last of the guests find their coats, her voice warm and cheerful as always. For the first time all day, I found myself alone, the wedding whirlwind fading to a soft hum in the background. I slipped quietly upstairs, into the silence of my old bedroom. The room hadn't changed. Same soft pink wallpaper, same bookshelf crowded with paperbacks, the same little lamp casting a golden pool of light onto the bedspread. It felt strange to be back in that childhood space now, after all the vows and promises of the day. My dress was a little wrinkled, my feet ached, but for a moment I just sat on the bed and listened to my breath. Only then did I remember my phone, forgotten in all the chaos. When I picked it up, it buzzed so hard in my hand I almost dropped it. I stared at the screen, blinking in disbelief. 420 missed calls. The number didn't even look real. Just a jumble of digits too big to mean anything. But there it was, missed call after missed call, one after the other, all from my parents and Adam. Along with the calls, there were voicemails, text messages, and even a handful of frantic emails, their subjects screaming at me in all caps. "Where are you? Call US now. Are you okay? Answer your phone." For a long moment, I just sat there and stared. It felt like the past was trying to claw its way back into my life, right through the glowing screen. I scrolled through the notifications, watching them pile up like a digital avalanche. There was something almost funny about it. A family that couldn't show up for my wedding could certainly show up on my phone, over and over and over again. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the first voicemail, bracing myself for what I might hear. My mother's voice came through, brittle and sharp. "You need to call us back right now. We saw the wedding on television, no less. How could you not tell us it would be like this?" Another message followed, this one from my father, his tone rougher. "This isn't funny, you know. Why are you ignoring us? Are you going to throw away your family like this?" Message after message played, some angry, some frantic, a few trailing off into silence. Then I heard Adam's voice, softer than I remembered. "Hey, sis. I just saw you on TV. You looked amazing. I thought it would just be a boring wedding, but you looked like a movie star." For a second, I almost laughed. Trust Adam to see past all the drama and notice the important things. It was surreal to think of my parents and brother sitting in a hotel room in Paris, flipping channels and stumbling across my wedding. I pictured my mother's eyes widening as she recognized my dress, my father leaning forward in disbelief, and Adam grinning with pride. They hadn't believed me when I said William's family was kind of a big deal. They thought I was exaggerating, or worse, just trying to impress them. Now, seeing it all on television, the Turner name, the sparkling guests, the live broadcast from the Gold Coast of Chicago, they finally understood just how much they had missed. But as I listened to message after message, my feelings didn't soften. Instead, I felt something inside me crystallize, hard and clear. All my life, I'd tried to win their approval. I'd changed my clothes, changed my words, even tried to change my dreams just to fit the picture they painted for me. But in the end, it hadn't mattered. When it was my turn to be celebrated, they chose Paris instead. Now, they were trying to claw their way back into my story, but I didn't owe them an explanation. I put the phone down, letting the last message play itself out. It was Adam again, his voice quiet. "Just call me, okay? I miss you." I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. For a moment, I thought about picking up the phone and calling him back, just to hear his voice and tell him that I was okay, that I missed him too. But something held me back. It wasn't anger, exactly, not anymore. It was more like a sense of freedom. For the first time, I realized I didn't need their approval to be happy. I didn't need to explain myself or beg for their forgiveness. My life was mine now, not theirs to judge or control. The truth was, my wedding had shown me what real family looked like. William's parents had welcomed me with open arms, their kindness genuine and unconditional. Grace had stood by me through every moment, lifting me when I was falling apart. Even the guests, most of whom I barely knew, had cheered and celebrated me in ways my parents never had. I thought back to the moment when I walked down the aisle, the cameras flashing, the music swelling around me. I hadn't felt alone then. I felt seen, valued, and most importantly, loved. Maybe that was all I needed. The rest of the night, I kept my phone face down on the dresser. Every few minutes, it buzzed again, another call, another message, another voice from the past. But I ignored them all. I let myself drift out into the backyard, where William found me standing under the stars, barefoot on the grass. He put his arms around me and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, the answer simple and true. "I am," I said. "I am." Later, as we drove away from the house, my house, now our house, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was open, the city lights glittering in the distance. I didn't know what would happen next, or if my family would ever understand my choices. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going back. I had found my place, my voice, my life. And for the first time, that was enough. 3 years can pass in the blink of an eye, or they can stretch out endlessly, depending on where you find yourself standing. For me, the 3 years since my wedding have been both quick and wild, slow and gentle, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes impossibly sweet. When I look back on that day, I barely recognize the woman who sat alone in her childhood bedroom, clutching a cold letter and wondering if she would ever feel whole again. Today, my world is very different. William and I live in a sunlit house perched on the edge of Lake Michigan, just north of Chicago. Our home is everything I once dreamed of, but never believed I deserved. The walls are painted soft, welcoming colors. Wide windows look out over the endless blue water, so that every morning begins with a kind of quiet magic. There's a kitchen big enough for dancing, filled with laughter and the scent of fresh bread and coffee. Sometimes, in the golden light of early evening, I'll catch my reflection in the window and almost laugh at how far I've come. William has built a life here, and so have I. He's busier than ever, working in the family's real estate business, but every evening he comes home and wraps me in a hug that makes me forget the rest of the world. He's still the same gentle, steady man who took my hand at the altar, but now he's also my best friend, my partner in every way. We spend lazy Sundays reading on the back porch, or bundled up for long winter walks by the lakeshore, the cold biting at our cheeks, and the world reduced to the two of us and the wind. I sometimes wonder if my parents ever think about me, if they regret what happened, or if they feel the ache of silence the way I sometimes do. In 3 years, we haven't spoken. There have been no letters, no calls, not even a birthday card from Adam. At first, that emptiness felt unbearable, a weight pressing down on my heart. But over time, I learned to let it go. I realized I couldn't carry their choices forever, and I couldn't fill the spaces they left behind with old hopes or impossible wishes. Instead, I built something new. A few months after the wedding, as a gift, William's parents gave us $50,000. "For your dreams," Charlotte said, her eyes warm and proud. I never imagined I would have that kind of freedom. The world felt wide open in a way it never had before, and I decided, for the first time, to do something just for myself. That's how the bakery was born. Grace was the first person I told about my idea. We sat together at the kitchen table, mugs of tea steaming between us, and I sketched out a plan on the back of an old envelope. She grinned, her eyes shining, and said, "Let's do it. Let's make something beautiful." With the money, we rented a cozy little storefront in Evanston, a bright space with high ceilings, brick walls, and big windows that looked out onto the street. We painted it sunflower yellow and named it Lakeview Bakery. The first few months were a blur of flour and sugar, laughter and nerves. Grace and I worked side by side, waking up before dawn to knead dough and pipe frosting, learning how to run a business the hard way. There were long days and sleepless nights, burned batches and missed orders, but somehow we kept going. Our neighbors came by to try our pastries, then brought their friends, and soon we had a steady stream of customers, families, students, even the occasional tourist wandering in from Chicago. There's a kind of quiet pride that comes from building something with your own hands. Each loaf of bread, each tray of cookies, each bouquet of cupcakes felt like a small victory. Grace and I made up new recipes, tried wild ideas, and celebrated every milestone. Our first 5-star review, our first busy Saturday morning, the day we broke even for the first time. Some afternoons, we'd collapse in the back room, flour in our hair and aching feet, laughing until we cried. The bakery has become more than just a business. It's a place where people gather, where strangers become friends, where laughter spills out onto the sidewalk. Some families come in every Saturday morning for cinnamon rolls, old men who sit by the window with their newspapers, little kids who press their noses to the glass to watch us frost cakes. I know every name, every favorite order, every story. In a way, I found a new kind of family here, one built on kindness and shared moments, not blood or obligation. Grace is more than my business partner. She's the sister I never had. She knows how to make me laugh when I'm tired, how to talk me down when I'm worried, and how to celebrate even the smallest victories. We still joke about that letter from my mother about how I was supposed to fail without them. "If only they could see you now," Grace says sometimes, a twinkle in her eye. I just smile and shake my head. If they could see me now, maybe they'd understand, or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. There are days, of course, when the past catches up with me. A birthday, a holiday, a song on the radio that reminds me of home. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I find myself wondering what my parents are doing, if Adam ever tells people he has a sister in America. But those moments are rare now, and they don't hurt the way they used to. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges, and I've filled the spaces in my life with love, with purpose, with new beginnings. I tell this story not because I'm bitter, but because I want you to know that healing is possible. That even the deepest wounds can mend with time, with patience, with a little bit of faith. You don't need everyone's approval to live a good life. Sometimes, the family you choose is even better than the family you're born into. So if you ever find yourself holding a letter that feels like an ending, remember that it might just be the start of something beautiful. Sometimes, your best chapter is the one you never saw coming. And sometimes, happiness finds you not in the places you expected, but in the ones you build for yourself, day by day, loaf by loaf, laugh by laugh, with the people who choose to stand by your side. And if you ever stop by Lakeview Bakery, I'll be the one behind the counter, covered in flour and smiling. I'll hand you a warm loaf of bread and wish you well, because, in the end, every story deserves a sweet beginning.